Hello Horror Hounds and welcome back to my A to Z of horror. We are at R with the 2007 Spanish found footage movie. R is for Wreck. Please, as ever, check out Jambo Shango and Randy Mole's own A to Z of horror. I'll provide a link in the description field below to their entry for R, David Cronenberg's Rabid. And by the way, as an aside, do you guys want me to do a film by film retrospective of David Cronenberg's work as I did for Dario Argento, or perhaps John Carpenter or George Romero? Let me know in the comments below, but let's get back to the business at hand. Angela, or I think it's pronounced Angela, played by Manuela Velasco, a TV anchorwoman, and her cameraman, the unseen Pablo, played by the film's actual cinematographer, Pablo Rosso, record the activities of a fire station during a night shift for a sort of slice of life TV series called While You're Asleep. They follow the firefighters to an alarm call at an apartment building following reports of screams from one of the apartments and perhaps an injured elderly woman. When they arrive, the police are already on the scene, as are many of the tenants already awake and gathered down in the foyer. Things swiftly spiral out of control. I think Wreck is, to my mind, based on what I've seen, probably, well, it's the best found footage movie I've ever seen. It's the one that, for me, I ask the least questions while I'm watching it, notably, the hoary old chestnut. Why don't they just put the camera down and fuck off? But the setup, the execution, the really stripped back storyline, the fact that it's all compressed into about 75 minutes, so there's no real need for extensive characterization. It's just a situation that's going to hell in a handcart, and the reason to keep filming is actually really well done. It's a really neat, nifty little formula that just lets the film barrel on without you going, why are they still filming? And who on earth edited all of this together? I mean, one of the things about an awful lot of found footage movies is they get a little bit too flash, and you're thinking, all right, who edited this together? Blair Witch, most recently. An awful lot of the scares, the jumpy scares, are in the edits, and you're thinking, wow, really, come on, guys. This is so slick, it's so well done, it's so immersive that it makes me not write off found footage completely. The first time you watch it, if you enjoy it as much as me, you'll get swept up in the barreling plot that just snowballs. Once things start to go downhill, they go downhill fast. Then when you come back to watch it a second, a third time, you'll try and work out how some of these amazingly choreographed scenes, how the tricks are pulled off. Are there hidden cuts, or did we really just enter a building, get introduced to a bunch of people, follow one of them, a police officer, up a flight of stairs, then into an apartment building, down the hall, to watch him get attacked, and then have some FX prosthetics and blood and a bit of flesh tearing at his neck, and then the camera runs down. Some of these shots must have been choreographed within an inch of their lives and set up and probably rehearsed to death. This really is a sort of, it's a ghost train of a movie, but it's been designed so meticulously, all the little nuts and bolts, there's no fat on it. Everything is designed to, like a roller coaster, it slowly brings you up to the top and then you're off, right through to the end of the film. What Rex seems to do effortlessly, which belies the amount of planning and probably work done at script stage that went into this, is it so successfully establishes a sense of space and of who's who. You're never lost with regards to where you are in the building and who you're with and who you're being introduced to or reintroduced to. I always suspect that the stellar success of the Blair Witch Project People took the wrong elements of the success formula from that into the flowering found footage subgenre. I think what they saw were low overheads and high profit margins, and thought that found footage was a shortcut to doing things on the cheap, and it's really not about that. Planning and execution. It was there behind the scenes in the Blair Witch Project, which is okay. It's here in spades behind the scenes, planning and execution for REC. This is a new spin on the old Infection story. It was remade almost immediately in America using the title Quarantine. So that tells you you're talking about an enclosed space with an infection that then sort of becomes a zombie movie. It's heavily influenced by The Infected in 28 Days Later. It's going to be a matter of taste whether you want to call these zombies or The Infected. Whatever works for you, that kind of semantics. I'm with the dude on that one. Just know that as comfortable as you may be with your own categorization, you'll get to a point where you think, okay, right, this is a zombie movie, or it's an infected movie, it's some sort of aggressive form of rabies or something like that. As comfortable as you think you will be with this, if you watch this Spanish film, I understand, I've not seen Quarantine, I understand that the reveal is that it's a mutated rabies virus. There is no such safety net with REC. It pulls off a sort of last minute coup that essentially smashes together 2 or 3 subgenres. You're watching an infection movie, you're watching a found footage movie. By the end of it, you're watching some weird ass sort of demonic possession movie. This infection, it seems to be by way of synthesizing evil with a view to creating an antidote to evil, using patient zero in the form of a kidnapped, possessed child. Honestly, it's one of the holy grails of watching horror movies to go, whoa, I've never seen something like that before, or I've never seen a story idea like that presented. A zombie apocalypse by way of trying to cure evil through synthesizing an antidote based on a possessed girl. I mean, who comes up with this stuff? And why can't they come up with more of it? It was whilst rewatching REC to do this video that I thought that REC successfully captures a kind of Resident Evil game vibe that Paul W.S. Anderson decided to eschew in favour of his increasingly ridiculous departures from the Resident Evil games. I'm not averse to some Resi movie action. They're kind of like, for me, the Fast and Furious of horror movies. And I do kind of love them for their increasingly goofy exploits. They're just a series of films in their own world. They're a subgenre unto themselves, Resident Evil movies. I'm just saying that if you're after a cinematic experience that's more akin to some of the Resident Evil games, then REC is the film for you. And surely with a lean, mean 75-minute running time with really no time to pause for breath once the S hits the F, this can't be a film with context, can it? Well, it actually can. REC is clearly a post 9/11 film. And a connection one of my friends made, so I can't claim credit for this. I've not seen the 2002 documentary 9/11, but that sees filmmakers who were assigned to a New York firehouse with the intention of making a film about a new recruit, a probationer, and his first experiences as a firefighter. They just happened to be filming on the 11th of September 2001. We got one of the few instances of footage of the first plane hitting the first tower, and they were given permission to keep filming following the fire chief during the attempted rescue operation going into the lobby of Tower 1. And one of the first traumas in that documentary is the sound of bodies falling to the ground as they stood in the foyer. There are clearly parallels between that documentary and the setup of REC, and also one of the first big scares, big jumps. Another muse of the film, though it doesn't pause to preach about it, is that the film is sort of like a little petri dish scenario, a sort of bottle, ship in a bottle scenario that pits freedom of speech against the powers of perhaps an overreaching government, as embodied by the health inspector that comes into the building, and more especially the sort of voice of God, the voice of officialdom outside the sealed off building on the bullhorn, instructing everyone inside to follow orders, remain calm and not question anything, whilst the journalists inside want the truth to be told, not the official sanctioned version of the truth. And as I mentioned earlier, for good measure, in the dying minutes, there's an international church conspiracy as well, if you really want to go bug nuts with this. So much like an infected tenant tearing up a stairwell to get towards a really cute Spanish reporter in a vest, we are tearing our way towards the next installment, S, which is rubbish. Although we say rubbish in the UK, over in the US our cousins have a different word for it, trash. So please join me when we reveal that S is for